Hey, whatever. Again, I could have sworn I made 2 or 3 videos of this yesterday and posted it, but basically, I never saw them online. So this may be a case of them getting evaporated, or this could be a case of you already know this shit, and why is Don saying it? Well, Don has the mic, all right, so he just wants to run off his mouth and make sure everybody knows. But at first, when the awakening had occurred, I had asked a few of my friends who were identifying with me and asking me questions like, how do you know these voices or these feelings I'm getting are the devil and they're angels? And I was getting answers to these questions that, at least in the last 5 to 6 years, have proven correct. Little tidbits, little riddles, little methods, little rules of thumb. Now, something I want to include in here that's very important, and it's very important to me because it's probably one of the first and biggest signs I had gotten ever, and it was 20 to sort of 30 years before I had even had any idea what the fuck the ascension was or the awakening or anything like that. Okay? All right. I knew at a very young age there was something very, very unique about our generation. Now, of course, even at that age, let's say 10 years old, I knew that, well, doesn't every generation apparently think that? Because our parents always told us how we were going to think we were cool, but when we got older, we realized we weren't really cool. It was our parents who were teaching us, vice versa. I'm not saying that that's not true on the physical plane, but I started noticing some very unusual things. And basically, they have to go along the lines of a shift. And this shifting of generations has been noticed by two experts, which I later read a book on, and the book is very famous for almost being prophetic in how it's predicted the cycles. It's not spiritual or religious or anything. It talks about the cycles of generations in the United States of America. And if you look in one way or another, although things change, times change, swords go to guns, um, biplane aircraft to go to supersonic jet aircraft, that one way or another, these things will overall, in the general story, replicate themselves. And it's by Strauss and Howe. It came out in 1991, and it's a book called Generations. And I started reading this book, and I was just awestruck at how accurate they were about our generation and some of the things they were saying. And yet, they were right, and yet contradicting a lot of the same exact points that other people were saying. And they were baby boomers. So they were referencing how much of a hard time the Xers had, how much trouble we have, and yet how much our parents think we have it easy. How our generation, amazingly enough, is seen as MTV porn stars, pimp and hoe parties all the time, and yet our parents are the ones who were supposedly all about the summer of love and loving each other, then went yuppie and turned to only money, greed, cocaine, and divorces in the 80s. Now, is that something that happens in every generation? If so, I'm still waiting for the 80s for us. Or maybe it was the other way around, because that's how we used to be. But I started noticing things about our generation that were very different. This concept that they had mentioned was happening, but on a different level, on a very different level. And to basically speed up the story here, okay, what I began to discover, although I had no idea to what extent, was that we were different. We were different. I don't know if it was that we were aliens or from another planet, or maybe they're putting stuff in our food, probably all of the above. But I knew that there was something different. Now, when I say generations, I want to keep two things in mind. They defined Generation X as those born between 1961 and 81, which sounds about right for Generation X. But you got to keep in mind, if you think about it, I have friends that are in their 50s. I'm 43 right now. And I have best friends that are in their late 20s. I mean, so I really see it as, when I say generation, I mean a generation as in like how we are as a group of individuals. We listen to the same music. We basically have the same philosophy. So what? We're a little immature this way or that way. But overall, we're not like they are. We don't have those old beliefs of things. We kind of get it. In fact, I've talked to some of these indigos, many of them, who are in their teens. And when I talk to them, in my honest opinion, without being egotistical like some parents can be, I think they're naturally born way more brilliant than we are, and I think we know that. And I think it's because of who they were before. Backing up something I didn't believe of before, which was reincarnation. Now keep in mind, I'm not a spiritual, religious guy, none of the above. And then I started matching together exactly what was going on. And I've been working on this one for a long time, and all the pieces are there. All the pieces are there, and this is a big piece of it. And I hope you can see it, okay? What I started realizing was something was going on where essentially, if you want to look at us as a generation, human beings, my body, this sexy body of mine, I'm simply the vessel. It's the spirit and the soul that comes in, right? Something was going on where there could not be physical involvement with a problem going on the planet. And you've kind of heard about this. Maybe there's some secret alien invasion or something like that, right? Something along those lines. Well, how do we get boots on the ground? It's funny because I heard the term ground crew. The ground crew. There's the human angelic ground crew. Basically, it would be to sneak in spirits or spiritual entities, angels, within the bodies or souls of this generation. The best way to hide them out would probably be to put them in safe positions so they wouldn't be suspected and they wouldn't be threatened. So I wouldn't put them in young black teenagers or young Latinos. Because you know what happens then? They all get killed, they all get displaced, and they get programmed, whether it's the CIA putting cocaine and AK-47s in the ghetto, whatever. It's all political. Hey, now they're putting Vicodin in the White Hood. Why? Because they know who we are. They know who we are now. And I thought this was just an idea of mine, and I would ask my friends, do you know what's going on with the X? Now, keep in mind, here's some interesting statistics. We were not supposed to be called Generation X. Our generation had actually already been named before any of us were even born. Okay? X, first of all, is a numerical factor, meaning the unknown. Now, that ended up being perfect because we were the first generation that broke records in almost every department and still do. Although we seem so boring, such slackers. X unknown. Madison Avenue spent billions of dollars trying to market to us. If they tried to sell us a brand new t-shirt or brand new car, we would go to Goodwill or the Salvation Army. We were paradoxical. We would do the opposite of whatever large mainstream media did. We were rebels. This rebellion got us labeled as HDHD, hyperactive disorder. In other words, we had too much of a mind. The one thing that seems to be what you may call the only negative thing about these angelic humans is that they're very rebellious towards the man-made laws. They're very kind, they're very gentle. In fact, when the economic depression happened, which was at the peak of when Generation X was buying houses and buying stocks, we donated more time and more time and money to charity than anyone else had before, to the extent that our generation alone donated so much, it outnumbered every other generation or demographic combined. Only during economic downfall. That never happens. We were the first generation, that one generation alone, one demographic alone. Not race, not all women, not all Latinos, our age group. 85.5 million. We are now the biggest and strongest in the country. We run everything, literally run everything. All right? But they won't tell you that. Okay, we're the ones who pay Social Security. We are the #1 vote. Yet listen to the politicians. They won't say a word to you. Everything they're preaching is about some other group, some other age group, some concern of your parents. Even some concern that you think you should be having for your kids. But it's never to you, and yet you are the biggest vote. We are the only ones who ever got one man and voted into office. If it wasn't for us showing up to the polls, this man would not have gotten into office, and that was Obama. Now, it's interesting because as children, we always had two big predictions. As children, one, we don't vote. Why? Because our vote doesn't count. Remember, you're always right, but it's never exactly how you think. We were right. Our vote didn't count, did it? The only time we showed up, we got promised something. They said, well, if you guys show up, you'll see, man, you can make a difference. And not only did we make a difference, we made history. We got him in office, and it was the first time in history, that a president was elected into office and did nothing. No tax breaks, no bonuses, no benefits, nothing. For only one generation. That was the biggest one in the U.S., Gen X. And that was the one who got him into office. That had to be deliberate. That's never happened in U.S. history. And it goes on and on down the line. No other demographic has not been able to totally recover from the economic depression because of the timing of it. The houses being bought, the stocks being bought, the war going on, besides Generation X. The country was so resourceful after September 11th, almost more so than World War II. The majority of people who died in the Twin Towers were of what generation? X. Most who went off to war were of what generation? X. Almost all the people who lost homes in the mortgage crisis when they were at war are from what generation? X. If it wasn't for what generation, your parents wouldn't know how to use a phone. X. Your parents wouldn't know how to use the VCR if it wasn't for X. The generation that's been pushed down, this is about stress and how now. They're baby boomers, and they're lecturing their own culture. If it wasn't for our generation, we're the first one where production rates in the U.S. have gone up. Trump and them are telling you, oh, it's going down, everything's going out of seas. We are the first ones to actually raise the productivity around here. Because we have a belief system, is the way they put it, I like it, that we get it done, we get it knocked out, we go home early. We finish it by Thursday. We can go home on Friday. Why? Because we want to hang out with our friends and family. Why? Because that's real. Generation X was not supposed to be called Generation X. It initially was called Generation 13, the 13th generation.